Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at this bike. This is one of the most popular beginner bikes that Honda has ever created. This is a 1997 Honda Rebel 250, and it's known for its very short seat height that makes it a really good bike for beginners who are just starting out. Let's look around this bike. It's a really fun bike. I would not think that this thing would be as fun to ride as it is, but let's go for a ride on it. Let's look around and learn about this Honda Rebel 250.
The moon's coming up with a sight to see. The radio's playing for my baby and me, and we're rolling on the river.
The Honda Rebel line is motorcycles that were in production since 1985. It was designed as an entry-level cruiser motorcycle, targeted at novice riders and those looking for an easy-to-handle and affordable bike. Let's explore the history a little bit of the Honda Rebel. The first generation went from 1985 to 1987. The original Honda Rebel, known as the CMX 250, was introduced in 1985. It featured a 234cc parallel twin engine, a low seat height, and a lightweight design. The Rebel 250 quickly gained popularity due to its user-friendly nature and fuel efficiency. It appealed to a wide range of riders, including beginners and commuters. The second generation ran from 1997 to 2016. I have this generation. After a brief hiatus, Honda introduced the Honda Rebel in 1996, and several updates and improvements. The second generation Rebel retained the same 234cc engine, but received a new frame, suspension, and styling. It featured a teardrop fuel tank, swept back handlebars, and a relaxed riding position. And the third generation, 2017 to present. In 2017, Honda unveiled an all-new Rebel lineup. They introduced two different models, the Rebel 300 and the Rebel 500. And these models offered a larger engine displacement to appeal to a wider audience. The Rebel 300 featured a 286cc single-cylinder engine, while the Rebel 500 boasted a 475cc parallel twin engine. And the third generation Rebels showcased a more modern, aggressive design, inspired by Honda's bobber style. The Rebel 300 and 500 were well received for their approachable performance, customizable nature, and reasonable prices. They provided an entry point into the cruiser segment for riders looking for style, maneuverability, and practicality. And of course, now Honda released in 2021 the Honda Rebel 1100. This 1100cc engine derived from the Honda Africa Twin. And this is the final step in the Honda Rebel lineup. Now riders that got the 300, they quickly sold the 300s as most beginner bikes, and they moved quickly to larger engines, hence the reason for Honda making a 500 and now an 1100. Throughout the entire history of the Honda Rebel, it remained a popular choice for beginners and riders just seeking economical and an easy-to-ride motorcycle. And it served as a stepping stone for many motorcyclists, introducing them to the joys of riding while maintaining a reliable and affordable package. The Rebel 250 continues its success as an accessible cruiser throughout its 20-year production run. You can pick one of these up. This is a 1997, and you can pick these bikes up for about $1,000 to $1,200. Brand new, they cost about $3,000. The seat height, it's a 26.6-inch seat height, so that makes it a very good bike for beginners who want to have their feet firmly planted on the ground. If you're a shorter rider, Honda didn't really try to and market this to women. This became a bike that women tended to get when they were first starting to ride. And I've known quite a few guys that have gotten these 250s. Something that you hear a lot when you are buying one of these is that, oh yeah, it belonged to my girlfriend and I'm selling it for her. For me, I find that this bike is extremely fun to ride, and I had never had the Rebel before. And this one was a surprisingly good bike. Wheelbase on this is 57.1 inches. The wet weight is 329 pounds. The seat height is 26.6, so very low seat height. It's got a 2.6 gallon gas tank and averages the range is about 170 to 180 miles per tank. And it's got a chain drive. You know, this particular bike is actually very well cared for. It's got some issues, but this bike, not known for its brakes. Brakes are actually adequate for what the bike is capable of doing. The maximum top speed is about 70 miles per hour. So it's got a 2-pot and single disc rotor up front. You also have very classic spoke wheels and conventional forks. Up front, your wheel size is an 18, and what this does is it creates a little bit more stability rather than having a 17. It feels like it just creates a little bit better handling when going through city traffic and potholes and stuff. Having a bigger wheel is always better. This bike does have conventional forks. You're not going to get any performance stuff, but I've seen some guys turn these into scramblers and change the forks out. Very nice forks. You know, the suspension is not great on it, but they work fairly well. You have a single headlight, and it's a little bit on the loose side, but it does have glass. You know, that's something that you don't see on any modern bikes these days. Everything's plastic, so this is not going to fade on you. And it's pretty high quality. I've seen guys actually get an LED kit, but I like the stock version of it, so I'll keep it like that. Then you have these very large, blocky blinkers, and on these older bikes, the stocks tend to rot out because of the rubber. As many of these bikes tend to happen is that they will crash. This one at one point crashed, and this was bent. You can kind of see there's like some dents here. I did replace this with a GPS unit, but I did use the chrome cover to power it, and this is a GPS antenna. I was going to get the cluster again, the stock one, but it was just too much for it. You know, like a lot of these bikes, the parts for it sometimes cost a lot more than just getting some cheap aftermarket thing for it. Tucked away here with 2 screws, you remove that, and it's additional wiring for the headlights and speedo and everything. So up front here, this is how the stock dash is, but the dash of course is analog. I got a digital one, and it works extremely well, and it does have the odometer and everything. I believe this is like $50. I'll put a link in the description below. And you know, you have your miles per hour, odometer, trip, and as soon as you turn it on, of course, the headlight goes on. And then you have the dummy lights here, or the indicator lights. So everything on it works. And high beam, classic indicators. Really retro about these kind of like indicators with the checker marks. I love seeing that even like in newer bike. On this right side, of course, you have your throttle, your kill switch, and your starter. Chunky buttons back in the day. And your brake lever. The brake lever is a little bent, but it's still performing pretty well. On the left side, you have your high beams. You do have a choke because this bike is carbureted. And you have your turn signals. They're a little bit on the rougher side. Seems like this bike was stored outside, and sometimes the plastic starts to crumble. You have your horn. Everything works. Your clutch is a stock tank. There's a little bit of dent here, so this bike has been down most likely at very slow speeds, as these bikes tend to do. There's like a little bit of a dent here, not very noticeable. The tank is a 2.6 gallon gas tank, and there is no fuel pump. All the fuel trickles down to the carburetor. Currently have a ST1300 in my garage, and just looking at this bike, it just looks so simple. And I keep going back from the ST1300 to a 250 because I keep telling myself, why do I need such a big bike with fuel injection and everything and liquid cooling? This one's got none of that. You have a air-cooled engine, very small. You can see through the entire bike. You have your carburetor. These bikes, you know, they have carb problems because riders don't ride them for the winter and it gets gummed up. So it's very important to always turn off your petcock to the off position. This one is leaking, as you can tell. There's some discoloration, but you know, a lot of times you don't have to worry too much about this. It's probably just an O-ring. I plan on doing that. It's got 2 spark plugs, one on each side of the head of the engine. You'd expect at this price point to get a single cylinder bike, but you get a 234cc 2-cylinder that makes plenty of usable torque throughout the rev range. You know, the beauty of this bike is that the carburetor is right there, so if you ever need to clean it, you just pull it out. If you guys know, I used to have quite a few Ninja 250s, and to remove the carburetor is much more involved. This one, I think the beauty of this bike is that you get a very reliable bike that's dead simple to work on and learn about basic motorcycle maintenance. And this really helps, having like the carburetor, the spark plugs within reach without having to remove anything. You have a 5-speed transmission. This is a chain drive. It would be nice to have a shaft drive, but you'll never really see it on a 250. I don't know if I've ever seen a 250 shaft driven bike. Very small, but it's, you know, this is all very high quality compared to most modern bikes. I keep going back to these older bikes, and it seems like Honda was really putting in quite a bit of quality with the amount of money that they were asking for these. $3,000 got you a lot. On these type of bikes, you have to have your feet forward to use this. You know, I'm actually a little bit too tall for this bike. This bike is meant more for people who are a little bit shorter, and I'm not really used to the feet forward type of riding, but this bike is feet forward, shift forward, and typical 1 down, 4 up. Neutral is a little bit hard to find on it. The foot pegs are also, at highway speeds, there's a lot of buzzing coming in through those foot pegs. Because this bike was dropped, I don't have the left side plastic. You could get it on Amazon. I did buy it, but unfortunately it fell off while I was riding because of the vibration. So now I don't have it again. But this is where the air filter is. So you would just kind of pop the plastic that you have here. And the bad thing about this plastic, for some reason, it comes out so far that when you stop at a stop sign, you're kind of like rubbing against that. I prefer it to be a little bit narrower here, at least for me. So to remove the air filter, you just remove the 4 screws and it's inside here. This bike has a kickstand, but no center stand, so it makes it hard to work with. Also, the previous owner cut the exhaust, and it's extremely loud. Actually, this is called the Harley-Davidson sound mod that Honda Rebel 250s do. The bike sounds like a little Napoleon complex bike because it sounds like a Harley, but it doesn't go anywhere. I am kind of trying to figure out solutions for making this thing a little bit quieter. And you know, this was just like cut out, ground out, so it's still kind of sharp. And of course here you have your passenger foot pegs. I haven't tried carrying a foot passenger here. You do have your helmet lock because there's no storage at all on the bike. Have shocks in the rear. You can adjust them. I find that for my weight, 170 pounds, the suspension bottoms out a lot. Another interesting thing is that you have handlebars that swoop back. And I think the biggest surprise about these handlebars is that I thought that this bike might not be a very good handling bike, but it's surprisingly amazing in slow speed maneuvers like in the parking lot. Hence the reason that they use this for the motorcycle safety course, along with the fact that it's very inexpensive. So the swooped back handlebars give you a very natural, comfortable position for riding. And most bikes I've had were much flatter. You could modify this. You know, this bike makes a very good bike for a scrambler modification or even a cafe racer. Here's the seat on the bike. It's got one single seat, and I don't have a lot of complaints about it. I think my complaint is mostly like vibration coming through the foot pegs. But for me, being a 5'9", I find this bike very cramped. I've never felt like that on a bike, but I couldn't do long miles on this just because of the cramped feeling that I have on this. It's just too short for a average sized person, I think. And with the seat comes the rear passenger seat, which is really just a chunk. You would have to have somebody that was very well mannered to sit here. It's hard. It doesn't seem very comfortable, but it does have foot pegs for your passenger. You could get saddlebags, and I believe these are the mount points for the saddlebags. This is part of the frame, so you can just kind of put it in here. It seems very sturdy, and it seems a much better option than carrying a passenger. The rear, we have a 15-inch rear wheel. In the front is 18, and spoked, and also it's got a drum rear brake. And in the rear you have a very stylish tail light. The blinkers have seen better days. They have electrical tape on it, but this is an upgrade that a lot of people would do, is put like smaller LED bulbs. That way you don't waste your battery as much. And it's got a nice fender. Everything is like very well designed on it. Of course, here's your drum brake, and this is the mechanism for actuating the drum brake. Very simple. You know, that's the beauty of this bike. Everything about this is simple. There's nothing complex. Even the way they mount the shock to the rear swing arm, it's very simple. It's just a weld, and you have 2 shocks on each side. Do you have the cover for this? This is where the battery is on the right side, and I bought this on Amazon. It's a set. It was $30, but the left one fell off, so I only have one. Yeah, batteries here. All the wiring is very easy to kind of route things. So if you wanted to move something in here, it's extremely easy. Right side of the engine, this is where your dipstick is for measuring your oil. And you take measurements while it's level and don't thread it in. Typical Honda measuring. Your rear brake, just the brake lever mechanism is insanely large. You know, they spared no cost with making that. This is one big piece of metal. And of course you have your feet forward position. And this is the mechanism for the carburetor and the throttle. So everything is reachable. That's your idle speed control. It's like you don't have to struggle to get to it. Right here you have your starter. You don't have to remove any plastic on this bike because it doesn't have any. So it's perfect for beginners. Let's go ahead and sit on this bike. I just want you to see how it is. Like, I've never had a bike that you bend your legs so much. This thing is just one of the shortest bikes ever. 26 inches tall is crazy. And no center stand. That's a little bit of a problem for maintaining your own bike. But if I just want to kind of put my feet forward so you guys can see, even I can reach the floor without any issues here. So this is the way you would sit. And you can see I'm a little cramped. I can ride it fine, but the type of person that would get this would be somebody that's a little bit shorter. And it is a very confidence-inspiring bike to ride because it's not intimidating, it's not large. The seat height is so low that you could always put your feet down in any sort of condition. But for long rides, I feel like I'm very cramped, and it's like a single-seater. You don't have a lot of space. So definitely it's a bike for riders who are a little bit on the smaller side. All right, guys, let's go ahead and start this bike so you can hear this thing roar. I'm gonna switch the petcock to on, turn on the choke, key, and of course put it in neutral. Forgot that part. Neutral is a little bit hard to find on this thing. Now this bike is a little bit on the cold-blooded side because of the carburation, but after it warms up, as you're riding, it does become very smooth and very precise. I thought I had to clean the carburetors, but the carburetors work extremely well after maybe a mile of riding or so. Alright guys, it is time to take the Honda Rebel 250 for a spin and see how she rides. Now, the bike is pretty darn slow, but it sounds fast. That's what happens when you cut the exhaust. Just hear this roar. Remember, you still have a petcock on this, but this bike shouldn't be this fun to ride, and it is. I have a lot of fun on it. Second gear, third gear, and I'm going 28 miles an hour. That's how slow this thing is. Top speed on this, 70 miles per hour. The Ninja 250, the old one, that went like 105 miles an hour top speed. The new one, the 08s and up, they went 97, 95 miles per hour. So that's a big difference. This one is a 70 mile an hour bike. Not great. But around here in the DC area, you get on the Beltway, 70 miles an hour is a minimum. You're talking about you hugging the right side of the road and hoping that people won't run you over. But it's fine. You know, I've ridden my Honda SH150 scooter, and by the way, that went 60 miles an hour on a 150. Capable of being a like in-town type of motorcycle. I do have an appreciation for this little Honda Rebel 250. There comes a time in motorcycle riders' lives that they keep upping and upping the displacement and complexity of their bikes. Like for me, Honda ST 1300, very complex, very large, very heavy, and then you get something like this, and then you realize the reason you got into motorcycling wasn't all the bells and whistles of riding motorcycles. It was about basic transportation, having fun, having the wind in your hair, and the Honda Rebel 250 does that. And also, it's the little train that could. The Rebel 250 along with the Ninja 250 are the best beginner motorcycles you can possibly get. In the used market, you can get these for less than $1,000 if you look hard enough. Most of them have been dropped, and most of them have taught many riders how to ride. These bikes go from hand to hand. Usually riders, they'll keep them for a year or two, and then they buy the bike of their dreams, but they'll always remember the initial impression that these bikes put in their motorcycling career. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really like the Honda Rebel 250 along with other bikes, and thanks for watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.